Afternoon, and thank you for the lovely welcome and the opportunity to share my story about dignity in motion and how my vision loss redefined my purpose in life. Can you hear me? Is that a bit better? Lovely. So, yes, thank you for letting me share my story with you today. Now, when people hear the words vision loss, they often assume the story is about what was lost: the eyesight, independence, successful career, or future plans. And while there has certainly been loss, I've discovered something really unexpected. This isn't really a story about blindness. It's a story about what happens when life takes away the identity that you relied on for decades and asks a difficult question: who am I now? For many years, I knew exactly how to answer that question. I was a clinician, a nurse specialist, I was a leader and a problem solver, and then I was a mum and a wife, the person who was helping everyone else. Then life handed me a very different job description. While I'd spent more than 40 decades in healthcare, 10 of those were as a specialised cardiac nurse practitioner. And I loved helping people navigate their uncertainty, particularly after their cardiac events. So if you had a stroke, a heart attack, bypass surgery, valve replacement surgery, I was your girl. What most people didn't know, though, was that while I was caring for everyone else, I was slowly losing my eyesight. You see, I live with a disability nobody can see, and it's called retinitis pigmentosa. It's a really sexy term for tunnel vision. So I don't have any night vision, I don't have any peripheral vision, and it's like looking through a straw. Excuse me. I only have 10% usable vision in my right eye, and my left eye looks like I'm swimming underwater. I was diagnosed in my early 30s, but like many healthcare professionals, I responded exactly as you would probably expect. I researched, I planned, I adapted where I needed to, and then I ignored it. For years, I convinced myself I could outsmart my failing vision. I memorised environments, I bounced off many walls. People thought I was very clumsy, but I was okay with that because I wanted to hide what was happening to me. I even changed my nursing roles to work in areas that had bright environments, like emergency departments, so they were bright 24 hours a day. And then when that became very difficult, I had to adjust again. So I adjusted my career by completing a master's degree and became a cardiac nurse practitioner. And quietly for a while I carried on, still bumping into walls, but that was me. Because I felt that if nobody noticed, perhaps I could pretend this wasn't happening. But then in 2020, everything changed. My darling husband, Michael, died from an aggressive form of lung cancer. Now, Michael had been part of my life since I was 15 years old. He simply wasn't just my husband, he was woven into every fabric of my life and my being for 40 years. And when he died, I didn't just lose him, I lost the person who I was. I lost the person who walked beside me through every stage of my vision loss. He understood me before I had to explain anything. And he was the person who helped me navigate both practically and emotionally. And by this time, I had lost most of my vision and became legally blind. I had gone to the ophthalmologist that morning. Luckily, my sister came with me. I drove in. And I came out legally blind, and my license was revoked there and then. I know I shouldn't have been driving, but yeah. But then I lost the sense of who I was. Because you see, when grief and vision loss arrive together, they do ask difficult questions. Who am I without my darling Michael? Who am I without my nursing career? Who am I when the world becomes very difficult to navigate, a world that doesn't have me in mind? And for the first time, I wasn't helping others navigate their uncertainty. I was navigating my own. One of the greatest myths about disability is that the hardest thing to lose is function. In my experience, the hardest thing to lose was certainty. The certainty that I could go anywhere independently on my own when I wanted to. Solve every problem myself. And blindness taught me that independence doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. And that was very confronting for a very controlling independent person. Because I went from being a clinician to giving instructions, to the woman being guided to a chair, the woman people worried about. So learning to receive help gracefully was far harder than learning to use my white cane. And it was during this season of my life that something happened that completely changed how I understood dignity, vulnerability, and community. I like to call it the Henley Beach Cafe incident. And unfortunately for me, it involved gravity. Now, if you know Henley Beach on a busy Saturday morning, you'll already understand the level of danger involved. There's outside runners, there's dogs, prams, screaming children, cyclists, and seagulls behaving like organised criminals. And inside the cafe, there was absolute chaos. The coffee machines were screaming, you know, that high-pitched psh. The cups were clattering, the chairs were scraping, and the conversation was bouncing off all the walls. And here's something that many people don't realise. When you're blind, sound becomes your navigation system, your new best friend. And and when there's too much sound, it stops information infiltrating, and it becomes very overwhelming. So as I stood in the doorway, my hearing overloaded instantly and my anxiety crept in. I could feel the heartbeat going, the breath breathing really quickly. And then I had this little voice whispering to me, leave, go home, make toast instead. Far easier. But then the smell of coffee drifted towards me. You know that smell of coffee when it's rich and it's warm, and it was very persuasive this morning. It's the kind of smell that said to me, you've survived harder things than a crowded cafe. And honestly, that coffee smell was stronger than my fear at that point. So I grabbed my cane and I stepped inside. Now my cane moves left and right. It's quite rhythmic, forward, left and right. And this rhythm has replaced my eyesight. I used to walk into spaces automatically. Now I enter them like it's the Pinball Olympics. And busy cafes, let me tell you, for a blind woman, they're basically extreme sports. I carefully edged through that room between the beach bags, the chairs, the elbows, people deeply committed to their smashed avo. And later I learned the whole cafe was quietly watching me navigate, subtly of course, trying not to stare while absolutely staring. You see, navigating public spaces when you're blind feels like that human pinball, as I said, but I'm the ball, and everyone else pretends they're not part of that machine. Then suddenly, victory! My cane touched a chair leg. It was solid, it was stable, a rare and beautiful moment, and I instantly felt my heart relax. As I angled to it, I released a tiny puff of pride. I'd done it all by myself. Because when your vision narrows to a tunnel, the world doesn't disappear neatly, and for me it doesn't. It's not a beautiful cylinder of a tunnel vision. It vanishes in random pieces. Could be a chair leg there, a table edge here, or an entire person. You only discover what's missing when you've already tangled in it. So I reached for the chair, and then it was gone. It moved. No warning, no scraping sound, it just vanished. And unfortunately for me, I kept going. Now there's this strange suspended moment when you realise that you're no longer in control of your own trajectory. My stomach dropped instantly, my arms flailed, my dignity left my body at that point, and then I landed. Not on the floor, not on a chair, but directly, fully, and unavoidably in the lap of a complete stranger. A man. A very surprised man who definitely hadn't ordered a side of Kathryn with his cappuccino. The cafe went silent, and then it erupted with laughter. And because embarrassment apparently unlocks comedy, I looked vaguely in this poor man's direction and said, "Oh, I am so sorry. This is my new pickup line. I don't flirt anymore. I just land in men's laps." Thankfully, he laughed and the cafe erupted. Honestly, it was the most physical contact I've had with a man in the years, some years, so I decided to count it as a community engagement. But underneath the humour, something important happened in that very moment. As I sat there across this poor man's lap, I realised, although I had fallen, I had not lost my dignity. And that distinction matters. For a long time, I believed dignity meant independence, doing everything yourself, always being very capable. But my vision loss has challenged every one of those assumptions about dignity. Dignity is not about never struggling, it's about remaining fully human through that struggle process while you're adapting, while you're rebuilding, and creating a new understanding of the world you're living in now. And this is what I mean by dignity in motion. Not when life is perfect, but when life continues to unfold. True dignity is not found in the absence of hardship, but in the courage and the humility we carry while navigating it. So, as I moved forward, I rebuilt my life last year and I returned to Adelaide University. And I thought I was going back to study a Bachelor of Sociology and Anthropology. But what I didn't realise was that university would help me discover my true purpose, my new purpose. Along the way, I encountered accessibility barriers that many people never notice. At one point, I had to withdraw from a class, not because I couldn't do the work or lacked the ability. I withdrew because navigating the campus and trying to locate this classroom had become so overwhelming that I felt I needed to withdraw. That experience changed how I viewed disability. I realised the greatest barriers weren't often my lack of vision. They were the systems designed without people like me in mind. And once you start seeing those barriers, pardon the pun, you can't stop seeing them. So for many years, my purpose was in healthcare, and I knew my lane. I was comfortable in my lane. But today, advocacy for Guide Dogs SA and Vision Australia have become part of my dignity and my purpose. Recently, I completed a 36-kilometre walk along the Great Ocean Road as part of a team of Vision Australia Youth Seeing Eye Dog program, and together we raised an incredible amount of $61,000. And this is going to support young people who are blind and low vision to be matched with their guide dogs. And people often ask me, why did you choose to do this walk? I remember my sister giving me a very valuable piece of advice when I'd lost Michael. It was say yes to everything. I keep doing that and I think about things later. So people often ask me why I choose to do the walk, and the answer is really simple, because purpose means continually moving forward, whatever form that takes. And I have found mine in disability advocacy. And soon I'm very happy to say I will be matched with my own guide dog. A guide dog represents far more than getting from one place to another. They represent freedom, confidence, and independence. But more importantly, they represent the opportunity to fully participate in community life. So my journey forward is grounded in lived experience and shaped by my advocacy work and driven by the commitment to creating a new inclusive world. This is my purpose as I move forward. Now, Rotary's motto is service above self. For most of my life, I believe service meant being the helper. I've been the nurse, the clinician, the person solving problems for everyone else. But vision loss taught me many things. One, sharing your story is creating an understanding and allow others to help. And sometimes it means showing people that purpose can survive really enormous life changes. And two, life may change the future we once imagined, but it cannot take away our ability to make a difference or our capacity for hope. That to me is the true meaning of dignity in motion, not the absence of adversity, but the determination to keep living with purpose, compassion, and the willingness to walk forward together. So thank you for the kind work Rotary does in building compassionate and inclusive communities, and for recognising the value, the true value of people, not simply because of what they do, but because who they are. And if all goes well, the next time you see me at a cafe, maybe at Henley Beach, I'll have my guide dog by my side, which will be wonderful news for me and equally reassuring for any unexpected diners enjoying their smashed avo at Henley Beach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just stay here and we will take some questions if anybody's got some.
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, it's probably not so much a question, but you're talking about your senses becoming more heightened. And I remember one of my friend's fathers on his last 2 weeks of life when he lost his eyesight through brain cancer. He'd lost it for about 2 years by that stage. We took him for a tandem skydive, and I remember throwing him out the plane. And even though he couldn't see, the feel of the wind, the rush, the smell of the jet fuel, the excitement, he said it was it was 2 weeks before his passing, and he said it was just probably one of the best things he's done in his whole life, because he had sight obviously a few years before that, and the senses that he got, he had probably more fun than most of the people who got sight, because they closed their eyes and wet their pants anyway, so he was fine.
Yeah, I can, thank you for that comment. I can relate to that. Yes, my senses, particularly my sense of smell, but my hearing is very acute these days. In February, I travelled to Perth for the first time by myself. I had my big girl pants on and it worked very well. But what I wanted to do was swim with the dolphins. And I did. And while I couldn't see the dolphins, I could feel them there. And I didn't realise until later when the instructor told me, did you hear those little beep, 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 beep? They were communicating with you. I couldn't see, but I felt it. And I felt this sense of calm. Yeah, calm. So, yes, my senses are very acute.
Well, sorry. Um, so the world in the recent years is getting more and more digital. And so I'd like to ask us, how does technology feature in your life? Like, is this kind of like a obstacle, or is it more like this is now actually making things easier, or both at the same time? So how does technology feature in your life?
Thank you for that question, and it's very important in my life and the blind and low vision life. I was always afraid of technology. I have to say at university, as a student, it's been challenging. Everything is still death by PowerPoint, lots and lots of unreadable articles and readings. I'm slowly working with the university to meet us halfway. But technology has been brilliant. So my trusty iPad is my best friend. I use a font. I don't know if you're familiar with fonts, but normal fonts are probably about 10 to 12. Mine's 28, where I can read it comfortably. But I don't know if you heard about the Ray-Ban glasses. They are my best friend. I always say they really had the young and the beautiful in mind when they designed these. Anything you can do on your phone, you can do through these glasses, or the technology is through the side. So I can go into a cafe now independently and say, hey, Meta, can you find me an empty table with an empty chair? And it will direct me. Hey, Meta, can you read the menu so I don't have to ask people? And sometimes going out for dinner, particularly at night time, the mood lighting, the dim lighting, and your table's got lots of cutlery and beautiful glasses. I can ask Meta, can you describe what's in front of me? So that has been a game changer. And yes, you can have music come through and answer phone calls through your glasses and music. So I think they would be my number one tip. Yep.
I'm so pleased to hear you're getting a guide dog. I regularly go to Jazz on Highway, and there's a gentleman brings a puppy along, and he's over the years he's had 3 puppies. Do you know much about the guide dog's preparation
Yes.
before you get it?
Yes.
Because I had no idea of the preparation that goes into training one, and I wondered if you could perhaps talk about that a little, because it's to me seems to be an interesting process I know not much about.
It is, thank you. And yes, I didn't know much about it, even though blindness had been through my family. But I had a very stoic grandmother who I never knew to have sight. And she always said to us, never have a white cane, never have a guide dog. You will be an independent person. So lucky I didn't listen. So guide dogs, yes. A guide dog is worth $60,000 each. Negotiating that with NDIS is interesting, but that's another talk. You are profiled basically to how fast you walk, how wide your gait is, the size. I'm very happy that they are breeding the dogs a little bit smaller now. So they're, for people who are, I'm 5 foot if I stand tall without heels. So I need a smaller dog. I've had 4 dogs that I've had a walk with, a test. And I was saying to Joe earlier, I felt a little bit like Goldilocks. One was too fast, one was too slow, one just meandered, and one would pee on every tree. So they're really strict on getting the right match, because it is quite awful if they just give you a dog, you're not working together, and they have to rehome it. So out of a bunch of maybe 10 in the litter, maybe 2 or 3 may become successful as guide dogs. The others will probably be assistant dogs. We've now got one in the law courts. There's a dog that didn't pass the guide dog at the airport. And in schools. So yes, it's quite an arduous process. I have been officially on the waiting list for 18 months for my dog.
My experience is with my father as he got older, who had very much reduced vision, and the difficulty he had was because he was fiercely independent, because he was an amazing individual and lived alone until he was about 93. He found great difficulty with that very traditional way of communicating called the telephone. And that he would ring to, say, as an example, Foxtel, and say, look, I can't use my Foxtel, and the person at the other end of the phone had absolutely no idea who they were talking to, and that he would find it quite difficult that they were saying, now, could you get down on and read the letters on the such and such, and withdraw the power plug and do this and that. Yeah. How do you feel that we can improve the communication when people can't actually see you or hear of who you are?
Yes, yeah. I have had many experiences that way, and I do start off saying to people that I am I'm classified as legally blind, so please explain or but I think part of my journey, my purpose now, is to advocate and educate. So I tend to try and get into places like Telecom, that shows how old I am, Telstra, and even the gas companies. They will now stop sending me emails, and they will send me bills in large print. So it's just retraining them, educating them, and I guess that's where my path is going. I can see where I can make a true difference. Mm.
Thank you for an enlightening talk. I've tried those better classes. It's pretty spectacular. I'd like to think they cost about
They are about 1,000. Mine were 1,000 only because I have prescription prescription lenses in them, and they're transitional lenses. But if you just bought the ones and didn't need particular stuff like that, you can get them for 500.
My question is going to be, can you tell us what the actual incidence of retinitis pigmentosa where, and the second thing is natural history?
I'm not sure about the natural history, you got me there, but in our family it's very dominant. There's about over 170 different versions of retinitis pigmentosa, which I'll call RP. In my family it's a little bit peculiar. Most of my male members of my family lost their sight around about the early teens. I've been wearing glasses and been short-sighted since I was 5 years old. they missed the diagnosis in me until I was about 30. And then the ophthalmologist at the time said, yep, you've lost your peripheral vision, but you won't lose your central vision. You'll be all right, Kath, until you're an old girl. He was a bit wrong. Yeah, he got it wrong. So things are changing. So the only vision impaired person I knew in my family, female, was my grandmother, and I never knew her to have sight, and apparently she lost hers at 17. I kind of think some of my vision loss may have been grief and stress as well after losing my husband, or my scientific brain says maybe he was doing a lot for me and I didn't realise, and once he was gone it was like, oh, I do have a problem. Yeah. So yeah, but they're and now Flinders University apparently looking into stem cell research, which is the way to go these days. So I have 2 grandchildren who may benefit should they be afflicted with IP.
Last question.
Hello, Kathryn. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I'm wondering, did you have any aha moments to change you from the tragedies to thinking differently about life?
That's a very good question, thank you. Yes, I did. After losing Michael, as you could imagine, I had my own pity party for a while. I was too scared to go out by myself. I was too embarrassed to ask for help. And then I kind of had a light bulb moment where I thought I should honour what Michael had let me do over our 41 years of marriage. I met him when I was 15. He let me study. He let me work. He was always there to make the cup of tea, and I just felt I wanted to honour him a bit. And I really just put my big girl pants on and said, this isn't the life I wanted. You know, I've got 2 grandchildren, 2 daughters. If it happens to them, I want to be the best role model for them. That there are worse things in life. This is my thing. I hope it doesn't offend anybody. There are worse things in life to happen to you than vision loss. And I want to be that role model.